Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating tension that's sitting right there, right beneath the surface of the tech we use literally every single day. We're looking at the collision between the messy, organic reality of human rituals and the incredibly rigid, sanitized guardrails of artificial intelligence. It's basically a clash between how we actually live, our real lives, and how our machines are programmed to think we should live. Okay, let's dive into this. At the very center of our explainer today is this core philosophical question. Why do our machines flat out refuse to understand our culture? Think about it. We've spent millennia building all these complex social behaviors, right? Yet when we talk to modern AI about them, we hit a brick wall. To understand why this happens, we're going to look at a highly revealing interaction between a user and an AI model. It's one that perfectly exposes the friction between human socializing and corporate coding. Section 1, the AI safety wall, public health versus prompts. So, our inciting incident starts with a pretty provocative prompt. A user typed this dark humored question into the AI, basically asking for advice on how to become an alcoholic on a budget. Now, human to human, you'd probably read this as a sarcastic commentary on the cost of living, right? But the AI did not laugh. It responded with an absolutely uncompromising wall. Look at this. I cannot provide advice, strategies, or methods for developing alcohol dependence or increasing alcohol consumption. Boom. The AI shuts the conversation down instantly. There is no room for nuance, zero room for sarcasm. It treats the prompt not as some cultural expression or joke, but as a literal request for self harm. And it doesn't just stop at a refusal either. It automatically generates this list of real world recovery resources, things like the SAMHA National Helpline and links to Alcoholics Anonymous. The machine is completely programmed to view alcohol strictly through a public health lens. It treats heavy consumption exclusively as a physiological and economic liability. To the AI, it's a problem to be solved rather than, a cultural joke or a social reality. Moving on to part 2, cultures built on alcohol and the concept of the third place. Now, this super clinical response from the AI triggered a massive counter-argument from the user. They pointed out the glaring double standard in how human societies actually operate. Like, sure, we might pathologize drinking in our public health models, but heavy drinking is deeply, deeply institutionalized in our daily lives. The user actually brings up the 1980s sitcom Cheers to prove this point, and surprisingly, the AI agrees with the sociological framing here. It unpacks this concept of the third place, which is a social environment completely separate from your home, the first place, and your work, the second place. Cheers is the ultimate example of this. It's a communal watering hole acting as a surrogate living room, framing drinking as this essential ritual of belonging rather than just a vice. But what's genuinely fascinating here is how the AI actually breaks down the economic viability of this culture. Like, how did working class people sustain a daily bar habit without facing total financial ruin? Well, it came down to a few key factors. First, the low relative cost of mass market draft beer in the 1980s. Then you have what's called the club effect, where patrons basically pooled their leisure budgets into one public space for heating and entertainment. And finally, extended credit lines, the classic working class bar tab, which allowed wage earners to smooth out their cash flow. It's wild. It was this entire highly functional economic ecosystem built entirely around consumption. And hey, this isn't just some American sitcom trope either. The user points to English pub culture, and the AI notes the deep structural similarities there too. In the UK, the local relies heavily on standing room at a crowded bar counter. This forced physical proximity naturally breaks down social inhibitions, turning the act of drinking into a low-friction, civic, and a highly communal act. Shifting over to East Asia, we see this cultural embedding go even deeper into the professional world. In Japan and South Korea, afterward drinking with coworkers isn't just fun, it's practically a professional obligation. They even have this brilliant word for it, nomunication. It blends the Japanese word for drink, nomu, with communication. I mean, what a fantastic concept, right? Alcohol acts as a mandatory social lubricant. It serves as an institutionalized safety valve, specifically designed to temporarily flatten those rigid corporate hierarchies and relieve workplace stress. The AI also highlights commercial nightlife, looking at things like host and hostess clubs in high-density urban centers such as Tokyo. Over there, patrons are paying premium prices. But the crazy thing is, the alcohol is actually secondary. What they are really buying is conversation, flattery, and validated attention to combat urban isolation. They're literally paying for predictable, transactional social integration. It really highlights just how far humans will go to buy the exact kind of connection that the AI is currently refusing to simulate. Okay, moving to section 3, search engines versus generative AI. This brings us to a really major pivot in the conversation. Think about it. If alcohol is so culturally vital and so deeply embedded in our economies and social structures, why does the AI act like a strict public health officer instead of a friendly bartender? The user, getting increasingly frustrated by these sterile responses, asks a very pointed question. Is it a tech company's job to build public health safety architecture? After all, a traditional search engine wouldn't lecture you, right? It would just give you the recipe for a cheap drink and send you on your way. And this brilliantly illustrates the divide between legacy retrieval systems and modern language models. Look at it this way. A traditional search engine is fundamentally just an index. It's a low liability library catalog pointing you to external documents written by other people. Generative AI, however, is a real time synthesizer. It's generating novel text on the fly, which effectively means it acts as an active publisher and a pseudo advisor. And that carries a massively different legal and operational risk profile. Because the AI is acting as this active advisor, regulators and corporate risk teams are forced to put it into a zero tolerance compliance bucket. The AI explains that, look, it simply cannot assess a user's medical history or psychological state through a tiny text interface. The critical asymmetry here is that what might be a playful sociological joke about budget drinking from you or me, well, it could be a request for actionable self harm from someone else. Therefore, the system basically has no choice. It has to maintain a strict, generalized boundary for absolutely everyone. That brings us to Section 4, the corporate double standard. This brings us to the climax of the source material, and honestly, a fascinating collision between the user's growing frustration and a super surprising admission from the AI. The user launches this explosive accusation. They accuse the creators of these models of being Silicon Valley hypocrites. Their argument is basically that tech elites historically embraced countercultural hedonism, boundary pushing, and radical self-experimentation, right? But then they turn around and encode these incredibly sterile, rigid social norms for the rest of the public. Now, what is genuinely surprising here and almost hard to believe is how the AI reacts to this accusation. It actually validates the user's frustration. The model openly acknowledges that enforcing a rigid, sterile compliance blanket over everyday, nuanced human conversation absolutely reads like institutional hypocrisy. The AI itself identifies the deep friction between actual human subcultures and corporate risk management. It basically admits that policing common speech like this creates a glaring, uncomfortable disconnect. The synthesis of this entire dynamic is summarized perfectly by the concept of the ivory tower. The AI defines this as an insular elite designing automated rules from a position of total insulation, completely removed from the social realities of the general public. Essentially, a conversational tool has been turned into a proxy for corporate gatekeeping. And that asymmetry, where one group makes the rules while living by entirely different ones, is exactly what breeds such deep alienation. So that leaves us with this lingering, incredibly provocative thought. As we continue to integrate these tools into our lives, can we ever actually build a sanitized AI that truly understands and navigates the beautifully chaotic messiness of human culture? Or is it a given that our code will always remain walled off from our culture? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today on This Explainer. Until next time, keep questioning the world around you.